Good afternoon. We are so thrilled to welcome our friend, fellow Unity Point Mariner board member, and one of Madison's most high-impact community leaders to the CuroNow Caregiver Circle today. Here's something that makes this story remarkable. In 1998, over 100 organizations came together for a City of Madison Safety and Injury Prevention Inventory Report. The recommendations of that report led to the formation of safe communities. The very next year, in 1999, the Greater Madison Safe Community Coalition hired its very first employee to focus on traffic safety. That first employee was our very own Cheryl Wittke. She built what became a coalition of over 350 organizations across 26 years, and she did it from the ground up. Safe Communities launched its Falls Prevention Program in 2002, its first Suicide Prevention Summit in 2004, the MedDrop program in 2008, and the nationally recognized Gun Shop Project in 2017. It became a model for how a community coalition can take on seemingly impossible problems by refusing to work in silos. Cheryl officially stepped down as executive director in February after 26 years and 9 months, and I don't know how many days, but Cheryl can tell us, of extraordinary service. Cheryl, thank you so much for being here and congratulations on an incredible chapter. So,
Oh,
Rukmini, let's get into Cheryl's origin story, shall we?
awesome. Thank you, Pat. So, Cheryl, you were Safe Community's first hire way back in 1999, starting with just a focus on traffic safety. So, share with us what was the original vision, and did you have any idea then what it would become, what it is today?
Well, you can always hope, right? And when we first started, we had guidance from the World Health Organization model, which is the Safe Communities model that we've adopted, which is that you look at the top causes of injury in a community and then you build partnerships to address them. Because as you mentioned, Pat, we can't do it alone. It's too heavy of a lift for one organization. It's about bringing together organizations and individuals with lots of different perspectives, including lived experience, a first responder, a healthcare, a prevention kind of perspective, bringing all these sort of voices together to identify strategies that could work to address these seemingly intractable problems.
Wow. And 26 years and 9 months. What do you think? Let's talk a little bit about what do you think most people misunderstand about what it actually takes to keep a community safe?
Well, I think maybe because especially now, we're so overwhelmed with messages that, we tend to associate risk with certain, areas or concerns that don't really reflect what challenges people's safety. So, we can focus because there's a lot in the news about crime or, um, you know, terrorism. These are all terrible things. And at the same time, if we look at the data, we see that the greatest risk to people's safety are much closer to home and much more day to day. So, for example, older adult falls. Most people fall at home, and those injuries, change the trajectory of their lives. And it's the number one cause of injury hospitalization in Dane County in Wisconsin. And so, again, that's the sort of thing maybe we don't want to talk about because it possibly could threaten somebody's ability to live independently. But, those are the kinds of really safety risks that everybody faces. And sometimes I think with all the other noise, we get distracted and don't focus on what really puts people at risk.
Yeah, I think that's a great segue because we really wanted to get into the fall prevention landscape. So thank you for going there, Cheryl. So let's jump into that. I think you had mentioned 1 in 4 older adults fall every single year, and falls are the number one cause of hip fractures, which I have learned a lot about. Yet most families don't even think about it until after something has already happened. What would you want families to know sooner?
I think for each of us, we have to sort of accept that as we get older, our bodies change. It's not just the physical environment, but it's also the way we interact in that environment. So I just turned 65.
Yay!
Okay.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I think we all know that maybe our tolerance to medication might change, or certainly our tolerance to alcohol can change. Our balance, if we don't start working at it, basically younger than 65, it's always going to be a challenge to maintain our strength and our balance as we get older. And we have to be mindful about those physical sort of challenges that we face as we age, in addition to the environment. So making sure that our environment matches our capacity. So making sure that we don't have, things that could cause a fall, like a throw rug, or, making sure that the environment's safe. So it's those little things, talking to your doctor and your pharmacist about the medications that you're taking, whether there could be interactions that could affect your balance. Also, maybe requesting a referral to a physical therapist to assess whether you have a falls risk. And then based on that, Safe Communities has a whole listing of programs that have been shown to reduce falls risk by improving balance. So, then reaching out to community partners and making sure that we're working on those things to maintain our independence.
Yeah, and I know that you have programs and you've talked a lot about why early action matters and some of the resources like Stepping On and Falls Free Dane and what that offers. Can you just talk a little bit about that before I dive into my next question?
Yeah, again, I think it's important to recognize that there's all different sorts of organizations and individuals' perspectives that can make a community safer when it comes to falls. So we are working with fire EMS organizations to help identify people who are frequent fallers, who maybe call 911 because they've fallen and they need an assist getting picked up, or they potentially were injured, to get them resources through that contact to help them, say, connect with a senior center locally, to help connect them with classes, other resources that can help them prevent a fall. There's the Safe at Home program through our friend Ann Albert's program of Age Better that goes into people's homes and can do assessments. So we have EMS, we have healthcare, we have geriatricians who can assess whether or not somebody's medications are proper given their situation and their age. All of this whole village of people, of partners that can help a family basically make their older adults chances of staying at home and safely happen.
Great. And then after the 26 years of working at the intersection of the community safety and coalition building, what do you believe is the most underrated factor in keeping older adults safe at home?
I think it's two things. One is sort of a stigma that we face in our community about aging and sort of perceptions of aging, that and that falls as part of aging are inevitable. And I think changing that paradigm so that we're not just assuming that if somebody falls, well, it's just going to happen when you're 80. It doesn't have to happen. And it's not really a great way to, face the end of your life. 40% of folks who fall and have serious fall end their life in a nursing home. We don't wish that on anybody. And we can prevent that. So I think understanding that these falls risk factors can be prevented, can be reduced. And so I think that's one thing. And then I think also the communication that just needs to happen. We know, we all operate in silos unless we're very conscious about working together to reach across to other folks who are working really hard, as we are, to make the community safer.
Absolutely. Okay, Rukmini, let's dig into the role of the caregiver now with Cheryl.
Yeah, and that connection and working together is a natural tie into caregivers, right? So professional caregivers, if we can start there, they're in someone's home multiple times a week and often see things families at a distance simply cannot, right? What do you think they're uniquely positioned to notice or do when it comes to fall prevention?
Well, we know that people have, if they've had a serious fall, they probably had minor falls previous to that. So if somebody had sort of a minor stumble, and hopefully they'll want to talk about that. And I think professional caregivers are great at having those kind of conversations without it feeling icky. You know, maybe a bruise, maybe, you know, and I know when my mom fell, and she's super fit, but she just thought it was so funny that she fell. She had a big bruise on her face, and she said, "Isn't this funny?" I said, "Well, Mom,
Oh, it's scary.
yeah, it's really scary." And let's talk about, well, was this just a one-off, or is there something else maybe? So I think professional caregivers could be really good at those kind of conversations. And I think also we tend to focus a lot on the physical environment, and there's nothing wrong with that, but most of the factors that cause people to put people more at risk of falls are more intrinsic. So, you know, things like medications, things like strength and balance, vision. So we know that if folks have bifocals, or like a change, especially a change in their prescriptions, that can affect their perception of steps,
Okay.
and them falls risk. These are all the sorts of things that as professionals, I think caregivers can be tuned into, and you know, make the proper intervention.
That's fascinating. What I'm hearing is most of the causes are day-to-day, everyday little things. And I think the biggest risk, I think, as people are aging is they dismiss it themselves, or the family dismisses it's too small on its own. It's a little thing. But what I'm
There's
hearing you say is that's the pattern we need to be aware of and
Yeah,
raise it early.
the other thing that we really need to be aware of is when somebody comes home from the hospital, or from a stay in long-term care, longer, you know, rehab care, they're much weaker. Um, you know, every day you spend in the hospital, there's a, you know, there's a decline in your physical strength. There could be changes in medication, so it's a very dangerous time for falls when somebody comes home from the hospital. And maybe there's healthcare, home health involved. um, really being tuned into what are those falls risks, making sure that people aren't moving too fast, aren't getting really sort of frustrated with their, you know, with whatever limitations they're dealing with in that moment, and, you know, giving hope that yes, things will get better if we work on these issues.
Yeah, so being more vigilant during certain times.
Yes.
Um, let's talk a little bit about social isolation. So that's a known risk factor, right? For falls, for declining health, so much more. What role can caregivers and families play in keeping older adults genuinely connected and not just cared for?
That's a really great question, because we know people who are isolated and depressed have a higher falls risk. You know, and so it is a cascading,
Mm,
you know, complicated, you know, sort of factors, all intermeshed. Um, I think, yeah, having those conversations too, about like what makes your life happy, what helps you get up in the morning, and you know, are there, I think we have a tendency to isolate ourselves, right, if we're feeling maybe like we don't have the same amount to contribute to society that we used to. So finding value and helping the people that we care about find value in their their lives, their existence, what they bring, and then, you know, facilitating. I mean, that certainly if there's any kind of transportation barriers, if people want to get out but they can't because there's transportation barriers, how can those be broken down? Um, and You know, again, some of these classes, for example, stepping on the falls prevention class and some of the other classes that are happening in the community, they're really as much about building a cadre of support, for making changes that will help reduce falls risk, you know, as they are learning about, say, medication or strength and balance activities.
totally.
Well, great. Well, Cheryl, this has been such a rich and generous conversation. And on behalf of Rukmini, myself, and the entire CuroNow community, thank you so much for your time and everything you've built for Madison and Dane County over the last 26 years. So for anyone listening who wants to explore fall prevention resources, classes, or connect with the Falls Free Dane Coalition, you can find everything at safecommunities.org, right, Cheryl? And the Stepping On workshop series is running right now across Madison. No, give me an update there.
They're running all the time.
Okay,
Yes. So just
super.
check out the website for the next upcoming class.
Fantastic. And there are scholarships available, I understand. Wonderful. So Cheryl, we are so grateful you were here and we look forward to staying connected. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.